Hey, this is Board Buds, and today we're reviewing Tend. Tend is a 1 to 6 player flip and write game by Ivy Studios. Uh, During the game, you're going to be taking 12 rounds and picking two tasks from a set of cards on the board, performing those actions and crossing off items on your board, choosing between upgrades and filling out your cargo points to get the most score. So let's talk about components a bit. What do you like about those?
One of the best thing components I thought were the markers. When you get resources, you can sometimes put them in your cargo manifest, and to do that, there's a stamp on one side with a shape of whatever it is. So, like rock will be all the rock materials will be a certain shape and color. So you can use the stamp to fill out your manifest that way. But if you don't want to use the stamp, the other side of the markers is just a normal that colored marker, so you can just do it that way too. So I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, the markers are actually really nice. You can see they're double sided, like you said, and they surprisingly hold their ink. I know a lot of markers. I think they made a big point about doing that, but and they give you a handful of them. I think I said 1 to 6. You can play with as many people as you want, but they give you enough for like six, and you'll have I think 6 different colors, including a black one.
The
Um,
black one also has a thin side and a blotter side. So instead of
mhm.
like Xing or checking things off, you can just use the blotter to cover it up, which I liked. Thought that was pretty nice.
Yeah, using the blotter was a lot better. It helped me keep more track of what I was doing. Sometimes when I crossed things off, it was hard to tell.
Yeah.
Um, but it was actually pretty nice. Like you can see on the board, as you cross things off on here, that blotter really helps kind of cover up the coins and stuff.
Yeah, it keeps it clean and clear of what you have and haven't done.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think I really like the dice that they have are nice and chunky. There's a couple different ones. Some of them you just put on your board and you will flip up and get resources as they come to the white side. And then they also have ones that you can roll, but it's very tactile. You have a lot of really chunky dice to put on your board, and it feels pretty nice.
Yeah, for a flip and right, there's definitely a lot of components and fiddling with stuff in a good way. Um, Mining and
Chopping.
chopping wood are scratch off like a lottery ticket, and they give you a coin to do that with. It's satisfying to do that, but I don't think the coin is great for it. It doesn't really have that great of an edge on it.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of digging, and once you start kind of digging into it, it's hard to really control inside the box, which can be a problem because if you go over the lines, you'll see on like the scratch off card, you can kind of sometimes accidentally scratch into another box, which will give away what you're kind of going for, especially with background color. If you uncover like a purple one, you'll get a better upgrade.
Yeah, that wasn't a huge issue in our game, but it definitely can be and is kind of annoying. But
You
there's
definitely got to
an
be careful.
yes, you have to be careful and play with people who aren't going to try to abuse that.
Yeah.
But there's also an app that you can use instead of the scratch off, and then it's just an app, so it is clean and perfect and avoids that issue.
Yeah, the app is nice. I mean, we didn't use it, but we tested it out and it worked pretty well. Obviously, you're going to run out of these, but I believe the game itself, you can tell the box is pretty big. It came with, I think, 200 scratch cards, and I would assume about 200 of these sheets of each one. Um, so it's a lot of stuff in there. I don't imagine I'll ever run out, but the option is nice, especially if you're playing with infinite people.
Another thing that I thought was good in everything, the symbology I think is really clear and is consistently used throughout. So they don't like switch around things or make it confusing. You very much know what everything is and where it can and can't go and what all the symbols mean. I thought that was nice.
Yeah, what you see on the card is like what you see on the board, so everything lines up 100%. Um, it's super easy to tell. Um,
Any art component things you want to talk about at all?
Otherwise, I think you won't handle the cards too much, but overall, the quality is really nice on them. Um, the only thing I noticed is that this copy came with some holographic starter cards, and they were very quite warped, so I didn't end up using those. Um, but otherwise, they feel pretty nice. Feel really nice to shuffle. Overall, I always think they do a great job with components with all the Ivy Studio games. So I don't think there's any misses here.
Anything else, or move on?
No, for
Where do you want to start with gameplay?
sure, we can talk a little bit about just throughout the game, kind of the choices that you're going to be making. There's four different main tasks that you can do, between fishing, chopping, tending, and mining. And it kind of lets you choose which path you really want to go down to. You can upgrade those, and I think in all of our games, everybody was doing something different, at least going down different ways to score. So it felt pretty good that there wasn't really one particular path that seemed, you know, OP or broken.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think you have to do. You can't go straight to fishing. Like, fishing can't be the thing you do first. It seems like it's kind of worthless unless you get a couple of the upgrades that make it much better.
Yeah, fishing could definitely be difficult, especially the way that it upgrades compared to other things. If you get bad rolls, you might just completely miss on your fish and
Yeah.
not get anything. So I would agree that you usually want to wait a little bit on that. And it did feel like you at least had to diversify a little bit, especially with how the cargo fills up. You're not allowed to put the same color next to the same color when you put down your shapes. So when you tend, you'll get green items, and when you fish, you'll get blue items, and etc. So you have to do a little bit of mixing matching to kind of maximize the space in your cargo.
Yeah, and you also have each sheet of the cargo manifest has three different sections, and two of those sections will not score any points for certain colors. So, like, your left section might not score any points for fish, and the right section might not score any points for mining. So that kind of helps guide you a little bit, but it also makes for some interesting decisions on where to put things and what to try to keep.
Yeah, it made it quite difficult, especially towards the end of the game. I last game we played, I was doing a lot of tenting and putting out pumpkins, which are worth a lot, but I couldn't fit them in anywhere because I ran out of space, and the only space was left in my zero for green items. So I had to kind of pivot away from doing pumpkins and move on to something else.
Uh, yeah. What is there any of the actions you felt was more fun or less fun than any of the others? I will say that chopping and mining are pretty much identical. You just have a different tools, I guess, to upgrade to make them better, but functionally they are just the scratch off grid and work exactly the same.
Yeah. Um, I think overall, I like tending the most just because I had the most kind of control over what I was doing. Yeah, the way you can set it up is you can put all your crops kind of around each other, and that way you can cascade when you water your crops to get bigger yields. But I did like, with the scratch off cards, it's random, but it still felt like most of the times you were at least getting something good. You were never really super missing, although it could be a bit frustrating. Like I was particularly if I was looking for the bug juice in the woods and just scratching around and I couldn't find it. And then like turns later, I would find three of them in a row. So it could be a little bit frustrating in that regard.
Uh, to offset that a little bit, they have a path down the middle, which, if you follow the path down the middle there, it's more likely to give you additional actions of that so you can move farther down. and it also shows you what resources are possible in each section for
Mhm.
those, so that helps offset it some, but it's still, like you said, I'm not, you're definitely right about
I never
that.
felt like it was too random to the point of like ruining the game, but you definitely have to go in with the mindset of you're kind of trying to offset your luck and
Yeah.
make the best of what you end up getting.
I do agree that Tend definitely felt like the thing you had the most control over, and also led to the biggest combos, I feel.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, you could water, like maybe you set it up well and you're watering 5 or 6 crops at once and getting all of those resources in one turn, which sets off some big long combo chain for you. Whereas
Yeah,
the other ones mostly didn't work that way.
yeah. There was a couple times where if you chop on the woods, you could um, get both the item and the upgrade, which then could fill in some other stuff and circle back. But it did feel like my biggest turns were my 10 turns.
Um, to help with that, though, there was also, as the rounds go on, you insert new cards into the deck of possibilities, and those often have bonus actions on the bottom that you can get if you meet certain conditions, and those would let you do like multiple mines or multiple chops and things like that.
Yeah, I do think that was one of the most important parts of the game was
Yeah,
you can see what's coming next round. So planning around getting those bonuses on the extra cards was pretty important. It felt like if you weren't trying to get at least one or two of those bonuses, then you'd fall behind.
those bonuses, those cards also come up after they come up the first time. They get shuffled into the deck and will definitely come back at least once more, I think.
Yeah, at least once.
I don't
Maybe the
remember.
later ones won't, but the early ones that you see will come back.
So when you see them, you can start to plan on trying to work towards them. But I failed to get the bonuses at least one of the times we played, and that felt like I couldn't do anything while everyone else was taking big, long, multi action combo turns, and I'm just doing one thing and sitting there waiting.
Some
So
of
that
them
felt bad.
some of them can feel pretty difficult to get, and you might need to pivot or do something not optimal to get them. It's usually worth it. Um, some of them felt like I could kind of just ignore, like it wasn't worth going out of my way to do. Um, it would just feel a little weird when you get a turn where they'd show back up, and it might just be a track where if I ignored mining completely and I knew there was two mining cards out there and they showed back up at the same time, then I was kind of just SOL.
Yeah. um, there's also one of the main ways you can score points are badges, which is turning in 3 resources uh, of specific types to get certain badges, which are some amount of points, which are these over here. Each row is not a badge, but they call it something else. But if you fill out 2 rows, you get the badge. I think that was a relatively important part of the game to try to do. But going into it, I thought, oh, we're probably going to fill out like most of these. But in reality, it's more like you get 2 or 3 badges, and that's the winner gets that many.
Yeah, especially like as I said before, if I ignored mining, I just wouldn't go for any of the mining badges. So if I really focused on chopping and tending, I'd be mostly getting those badges, but then ignoring all the rest of them. There are kind of some ways to mitigate and fill out if you're not like doing particular things. Especially there's this mechanic with gifting items. It's a pretty big mechanic in it. Anytime you get resources on it, these cards, you can give them to your neighbors, and then they'll get them on the next turn, and you'll get a bonus based on the card, which generally gives you some really nice stuff. Um, so throughout the game, if my neighbor is mining and I'm not, I might be getting some extra resources that way from them, or I might be getting some resources just from gifting stuff that will really come in handy. And I think that actually ended up being a pretty big part of the game because if you gift more stuff to your neighbors, you end up getting more points at the end of the game because you do a comparison of who gifted more.
Yeah, the rewards you get for that are also, like you said, are some really good ones. Like some of the very rare resources used to upgrade certain
Yeah.
things you can get from the higher levels of gifting. So it's very important. Slight downside to that is maybe you're just drawing fish cards as the gift cards you get, and you're not gifting fish. There's a slight offset to that where you can get rid of one of your cards every round with a random replacement, but you can get stuck with, oh, I don't have gifts to give, and there's not really a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah, I know like one of the guys that we played with felt like it was particularly bad that he kept getting stuck with resources that he couldn't fulfill. And when you do fulfill, you get a choice from two. But like Cody said, if you want to scrap it, you just have to take the next one. And sometimes, yeah, if you're not doing fishing, it can feel really bad to try and go out of your way to fulfill that, especially with some of the upgrade rewards. You really want to be hitting some of those neighbors. So it can feel a bit bad in that regard. But overall, I thought it was a pretty interesting mechanic.
Yeah, I liked it overall. I am not a real problem with it, but the randomness exists, and it could be bad, feel bad, but I don't really have
Yeah.
a problem with it. It's also like the only point of interaction in the game at all.
Yeah, that's true.
There's this is very much a head down by yourself, not paying attention to anyone else at all kind of game.
Yeah.
There's not even really like a race to points or anything for the goals or either. It's just
No,
everyone either
yeah. So
scores it independently, right?
there are goals that happen. I think in rounds 6, 9, and then at the end of the game, and you'll see those at the start of the game, and you just get to do them with no kind of competition. It's just whether you do them or not. And usually there'll be things like filling out a certain amount of your cargo hold or putting out a certain amount of crops or something. And depending on how much you do, you'll get that many points.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you liked the goals or?
I honestly didn't super remember the goals, so they're there. I think they're important, but they didn't like make have a big impact on my enjoyment of the game. I guess they were just kind of there. I don't think you could really just ignore them for the most part. At least not all of them. You could probably ignore one of them, but you had to at least do a little bit of all of them. So I guess they help guide you some, but they weren't super impactful in my opinion.
Yeah, I felt mostly like it. I didn't necessarily plan my whole game around them. Rather, that as soon as we got to the round before, I would try and dump as much as I could to maximize that, and then forget about it until the next one that came up. A lot of the times, it could just be things that I was already doing. Like if I saw a farming one and I was already doing the tending, then I just would continue what I was doing. But other times, you'd have to go out of your way to put a bunch of items in your cargo that you might not have wanted to. So in that regard, it kind of is a choice between doing something now for an upgrade rather than putting it in your cargo.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interesting decisions to make along the way. It's not a simple flip and right or roll and right, whereas a lot of the ones I've played at least are relatively straightforward and you don't have a ton of options. This is every round is a lot of options with a lot of stuff going on for sure.
Yeah, I think the main decision point is when are you gonna stop mostly going for upgrades and start moving to filling in your cargo or filling in your badges.
Yeah.
And if you're going to bother upgrading everything or continue to fill out your farm, or if you need to pivot so you can get some other stuff in your cargo.
Yeah, I did not do a good job of deciding when to flip those switches. I would start down the fishing path most games and then realize it wasn't working out and try to pivot to something else and kind of waffle between things. Did not do a good job of staying focused in this game. Are there any of the tasks you thought felt underwhelming or less enjoyable than others?
I don't really think any were underwhelming. There are occasionally you'll get a task that comes out that just kind of gives you money that is, you can scratch off on your board, which wasn't really super interesting, but it could help. One of the things that I didn't like about that is it felt like money really lost its value after a couple rounds. I really ran out of things to fill in with money, so a lot of times I would be getting it and just having nothing to do with it.
Yeah, if the if the bonus task cards come out that just give you money for basically nothing, you run out of things to do with that money
Yeah.
because you're really realistically not going to want to do all of the things that you can do with money,
Mhm.
and there's only so much you can do. But you can get the batteries, which is a pretty interesting mechanic, I thought. So 3 money, I think, gives you a battery, which then lets you perform an additional action on each task
Yeah.
twice for each battery.
Yep.
So getting a more powerful version of your task basically for $3 and when you want it felt really important and gave you a little bit of flexibility if you weren't getting the tasks you wanted out on the board.
Yeah, I did really like doing the battery pretty early. Um, but then, like you said, once you unlock all the batteries, you don't have a ton to spend money on.
There's these
You do
whatever they were
have
called.
on this sheet. You're able to buy some resources with your money, but it's a one-time thing, so you can only ever once pay a coin for a wood,
Yeah.
which I can kind of understand, but at the same time, it felt kind of bad if you if you're not doing a ton of chopping and need a way to get wood. I wish there was maybe a couple more options to do that instead of
Yeah.
just a single one. But
If it was infinite, it would probably make money too strong and too flexible.
yeah,
But one definitely felt bad because there was one of the games I was not trying to do a lot of chopping and I just ran out of wood, used that once, and was like, well, I still don't have any
yeah,
wood. Yeah, back to the batteries quick. The first time we played, I totally ignored them, uh, and that was a mistake. The second time, I rushed them as early as I could, and it felt way better, and I did way better that game.
yeah. I think having the ability to just add interest.
Uh,
So
Anything else you
yeah,
want to
so
talk about before we get into scores?
no, I think that was mostly it. So what do you think your score would be?
Um, I think probably a 7 for me. I really liked it. Most everything about it. No real complaints as far as the gameplay itself. But um, if you are not doing as well as the people you're playing with, which is me a lot of times, you'll do one or two things and then sit around for a few minutes while everyone else is taking big 10, 20 action combo turns, and that feels pretty bad. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I could see that.
but I enjoyed it. It's not a game I'd ever say no to playing. It's just not not a favorite, but yeah, a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
I think I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. These kind of games are just really in my wheelhouse. I like kind of the pushing your luck aspect and trying to make the best of whatever what you can get, cascading that into different actions and being able to see one move cross off a ton of stuff on the board. I also just really like that there were so many different ways you could go and different decisions to be made. So it was pretty fun. I would definitely put this on the table again.
Yep.
Cool. So that was 10 by Ivy Studios. And check it out.
Bye.